Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mr. Regling, can I ask you what categories of people did you speak to in the preparation of your report?
Yes, we say that, I think in our preface, we say we talked to many officials and private sector representatives with whom we met in Ireland and abroad. So we met with former bankers, central bankers, consumer representatives, government officials, journalists, politicians, financial regulators, trade union representatives and members of the academic community. And outside Ireland, we met officials at the BIS, the ECB, the European Commission and the IMF. So it was fairly widespread. We did not give any names in the report, but we talked with about 100 persons.
Well, could I put it to you, Mr. Regling, that it was widespread in a sense, but it really related to an elite and largely the establishment at the same time? And could I ask you in that regard if you will agree that perhaps when you speak about property acquisition as a topic was almost a national obsession in Ireland, and that it was hard to overstate the impact of this cultural attitude, that was perhaps the case among those whom you spoke to. But I put it to you that the big majority of ordinary people in this country were not involved in property speculation. And just by way of background, to say to you that this is a particularly sensitive issue here, because some of those who have pushed subsequent austerity justified it on the basis that, well, we all partied. But in reality, most people didn't. They were the victims.
This opens a wide field. So, of course, we talked to mainly people who played a role and where we thought they could help us understand how the bubble developed and what went wrong. So, in a sense, these were many of them decision makers. But we also talked, as I said, to academics, trade union people and journalists. So, but we did not talk to people in the streets. That's also correct to say, because we didn't have the time to do that. I would not call, when people bought apartments and houses, I wouldn't call that speculation, because they did it given their belief that prices would only go up. It would be a good investment, but it wouldn't be wrong. And they wanted to already buy early apartments for their children, because we heard this as an example. People bought apartments for their children who were still in school because they thought once they get out of school, university, and started jobs, they wouldn't be able to afford a house. That's why we use the word obsession, or almost obsession, which goes beyond what I see in some other countries. But I wouldn't call it speculation. That I have a different view of austerity policies, you probably know, so I will not get into that now.
Okay. Sir Regling, in your report under areas for investigation and policy lessons, can I ask you with regard particularly to speculation in building land and in property? Are there lessons in that regard that should find their way into policy changes? And again, by way of background, I refer to the fact that in Europe, the component price of a home that is caused by the land or the site value is about 15%. But in Ireland, in the top of the bubble, the price of the land reflected itself in about 50% of the price of an ordinary home. Mm-hmm. And an expert here, P.J. Drudy, writing in the Journal of the Statistical and Social Inquiry Society of Ireland 2007, said, "There is evidence to suggest that land suitable for housing in some parts of the country, and especially in the Dublin area, is controlled by a relatively small number of landowners and developers." Now, in relation to that, do you think it would be appropriate that there should be, for example, control of profiteering in building land, or in the subsequent housing, etc., that's built on building land? And should that not be a policy change as well as some of the others that you suggest?
No, Deputy.
This goes beyond our report. We didn't get into that. I think the fact that the share of the price of the land going up in a bubble, that's quite normal. So that, I think, is a common phenomenon. These numbers you quote, I cannot confirm, and I don't know what is a normal bubble, as to the extent one can talk about a normal bubble. But so the phenomenon, I think, is quite usual. You find that in other countries. What to do, I'm not an expert. We didn't get into that, and it's not my expertise. Okay. I think transparency is always good. The tax system can also play a role. Property taxes can play a role. But I'm not somebody, I think you have other experts who will come here who know more about that.
Any questions, sir?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Regling. The point is that a home is a social need, and those who profiteer are allowed to do so. That has been the situation in this country. And but my last question is this: in page 45, you say, it appears particularly surprising that there was not a stronger reaction within the banks themselves and amongst supervisors to lending trends that saw progressive build-up of concentrated loan exposures to and within the commercial property sector, and indeed I think you would add the housing sector as well. But was it the case, Mr. Regling, in reality, that the property speculation goose, so to speak, was delivering golden eggs by the bagful for the bankers and the bondholders and the investors, and those who were benefiting simply wanted the good times to continue? And then perhaps didn't that work its way through to the regulators and even the establishment politicians? They were all drinking in the same well of free market capitalism, so let them at it. Would that be fair to say?
I'd have to push you to the question. You're over time.
We talked about bonuses, so obviously the system was in place that people benefited from increasing loans. How far spread this is, your implications are very political. We didn't get into that. But certainly some people benefited a lot from these developments, and it was, let me repeat, against this background of everything is going well. Standard of living is going up for a large part of the population. GDP per capita was growing strongly. We know today it was growing too strongly. It was not sustainable. Everybody benefited, some more than others, but a large part of the population also. And people thought these good times would never end. And again, this was not an Irish phenomenon. This was the same in the United States and many other countries.
To wrap up, Mr. Regling, I just want to touch upon three things. One of the